But yeah, Bishop Auckland's been really badly hit alongside much of County Durham by the Storm Arwen damage. We've had thousands upon thousands of properties without power. Thankfully, I think we're on about 95% now reconnected, which is really good news. But unfortunately for that sort of remaining 5% of people, as you say, day 9 now, no power in some cases, no heating. We have a lot of rural properties who rely on boreholes, so they're really struggling to get their water as well because that relies on electricity. So it really has been a huge challenge. But I think the most heartening thing has been seeing how the local communities come together to really support people. So right now I'm in the High Force Hotel at High Force, who've been kind of offering showers and food and a little bit of warmth and respite to local residents. You can't quite see it, but behind me there is a beautiful roaring fire, which is there to help people get warmed up. And this is just one of many, many stories of the local community really coming together to offer that support.
Yeah, I think in times like these, people do. I also noted the Town Hill pub in the Yorkshire Dales, the highest pub in England, finished up with people they had to stay there for 3 days and 3 nights. So they probably had a slightly more fun time than many single elderly people in your constituency. They're on their own, and a little bit frightened. Do we, Dehenna, I mean, we understand that these storms come along from time to time, power lines go down, we get that. But what do the power companies have to say about the fact that we're now in the 9th day and there are still people out there without power?
Well, Northern Power Grid, I mean, I'll start with a compliment and praise the engineers who really are working against the clock and against the elements to get these repairs done. But Northern Power Grid themselves have actually apologised for the kind of poor communications to customers. I think the length of time these repairs are taking shows just how bad the damage was. Guys from Northern Power Grid have said it's like nothing they've ever seen in living memory in terms of the damage caused, which I think really opens up a wider kind of debate about how much resilience we need in our power networks and whether we need to be doing a lot more to improve that infrastructure as we move forward. But again, it comes down to that point about communication, because if you know that your power is going to be off for, say, 5 days, and you know it's going to be a vaguely definite 5 days, then you can plan, you can go and stay with relatives or check into a hotel or kind of really make those plans. But the problem is, there have been, people who've been told their power would be back on by 10 o'clock that evening. By the next morning, it's still not on. And 3-4 days later, they're still without. So it's making it so difficult for people to make those plans. And I think a lot of that, unfortunately, does come down to Northern Power Grids, just through that communication point. Certainly in the early stages, we struggled to get the information about which communities were the hardest hit, because we had volunteers coming to us from all over the constituency offering their support. But without that information, it was hard for us to know exactly where to send it, where that resource could be best used. And I know Durham County Council have had similar difficulties as well, alongside the Local Resilience Forum, really trying to get that information. Thankfully, now we have it, so we can allocate those resources and put the support in place where it's needed. But in my view, it's taken much too long, and there do have to be some very serious questions asked once everyone's back on power to make sure that this never happens again.
But it is being addressed, and the numbers are going down every day, yeah?
Absolutely, which is really reassuring. I got emails overnight from people who said their power had come back on at sort of 9:45 last night, which is really good news. But, we've been out delivering all sorts of help to people, from emergency generators to hot food and meals. We were out delivering sort of gas stoves and gas heaters to people. It shouldn't be like this in the 21st century at all. So we need to make sure that, one, we have a really resilient network, and two, that the power companies are properly equipped so that if any of these sort of disasters do happen, they can step straight in, get the support to the most vulnerable, get the support to the people who really need it. Because, as we say, 9 days without power, and some communities potentially facing further power cuts right up until Wednesday.
Did you imagine when you stood for Parliament you'd finish up doing things like this?
Sort of. I mean, I didn't think that this particular scenario would be on the agenda, but as a member of Parliament, this is what you do. You're there as a representative for your local community, but also as a sort of leader for your local community as well, which means when these things happen, when crises hit, it's your job to step in, pull people together and try and help. We did it right throughout the COVID pandemic, where my team and I set up a group of volunteers to draw together resources, allocate them to people who needed it, be it shopping deliveries, prescription deliveries, whatever. The storm's hit, and we've taken exactly the same approach, trying to pull people together, trying to get the right information. It's kind of part of the job, really, and it's public service. You go into politics because you go into public service. You do it because you care about your community, you care about your country. So of course, at times like this, you step up. I think any decent MP would and does.
No, I agree with you, Dehenna, and I just think it's a point worth making to those sitting at home that it's very easy to condemn everybody who is an MP, but actually the vast majority of MPs in a situation like this do the right thing.